To tonight's mathematics class. So in tonight's mathematics class, we are going to be looking at linear programming. So before I start, don't forget to subscribe and comment if you have any question on the topic or if you want more videos like this. And don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out future videos. Yeah. So before we solve this linear equation or this linear programming question which came in 2025, I'm going to show you some principles or some tricks which you need to know for you to solve this question fast and get these free marks. Yeah. So to begin, what do you need to know under linear programming? So our topic for today is linear programming. So before we start looking at linear programming, we need to understand what exactly is this linear programming. So linear programming, this is just a system, in short, which businessmen and businesswomen use in order to do what? To minimize and so to minimize what? Cost and what? Maximize profit. So this is what business men and women use for them to do what? To maximize their profit and to know what cost they will use. So now, as our main focus is to know how to come up with what? Linear equations. Equations which looks like this. Yeah. So now, how can we come up with equation which looks like this? So this will be our main focus for our video today. So this is our part 1. So in our part 1, we will be basically focusing on how you can be writing what? Linear equation. Yeah. So I said this is used to maximize the cost and the profit. So there are some terms or there are some keywords which you need to be familiar with or which you need to be looking for in a question. So every question has these words I'm going to be telling you. So we have some words or some key terms which you come across under what? Linear programming. So the first word which you come across is at least. So the word at least, you come across it a lot of time whenever you are dealing with linear programming. So now what does at least mean whenever you see it in what? In linear programming. An example I can give you is this question we have. So this question is saying he must what? Bake at least what? 10 scones. And again we can see here we have what? At least what? 20 scones. So this is the first term. So linear programming becomes easy when you understand the meaning of these words, because you will know which sign you are supposed to put here. Yeah. So these words are the signs which we are supposed to be putting in between the numbers. So whenever you hear the word at least, just know that this means greater than or equal to. So whenever you hear at least, remember it's greater than or equal to. Yeah. So whenever we hear the word at least in the question, remember the sign which you should put is what? This one. The greatest sign or equal to. Then the next term which you come across are these three terms. So these three terms, they basically mean one and the same thing. So the first word is not exceed, not more than, and what? Yeah. So these two terms. So these are the other terms which you come across whenever you are looking at what? Linear programming. So what sign should you put? So whenever you have not exceed or not more than, of course these are easy because we know that the sign we should put is less than or equal to. So here is less than or equal to. Yeah. So these are the second group of words which you come across. So if you don't believe me, you can check it out in this question for 2025. So we have again not more than. Again, we also have what? Should not be more than. Again, we have not more than, and should not exceed. So this is what I'm telling you. So whenever you understand these words I'm telling you here, you will never go wrong on any of linear programming question. So the last word which you need to know is at most. Yeah. So whenever we are talking about at most, it basically means the same as should not exceed, should not be more than. So again, at most is the same as less than or equal to. So whenever you understand these four terms, you will never go wrong on what? On linear programming. So now to conclude our video, we are going to look at these two examples which I picked in 2025 and also this one which we got from 2025 GCE. Yeah. So the question is saying, so the question is saying, a man wishes to bake two types of scones, type P and type Q for sale. He must bake at least 10 scones of type P and at least 20 scones of type Q. The number of scones of type Q must not exceed twice the number of scones of type P. He intends to bake not more than 60 scones altogether. Let X represent the number of scones of type P and Y represent the number of scones of type Q. So here, the first thing you need to do is you need to identify which letter will represent X and also which letter will represent what? Y. So the question has already told us, let X represent what? Type P. So you write X should be equal to type P. Then you come to Y should be equal to what? Type Q. So what does this mean? So meaning wherever there is P, we will replace it with what? X. Wherever there is Y, we are going to replace it with what? P. So now, going back to our question, we are going to pick those words I showed you, which are at least, not exceed, not more than, and at most. So these are the 4 words which you should be looking for in every question for you to get what? The inequalities. Yeah. So the first word is he must not bake at least 10 scones of type P. So this is our first inequality. So we say that whenever we have at least, it means greater than or equal to. So the question is saying he must bake at least 10 scones of type P. So meaning you are going to say, since X is representing what? Type P. So you are going to say our first inequality is X, which is type P, should be at least what? 10. So meaning should be greater than or equal to what? 10. So this is how you represent your inequality. This is how simple inequalities are. So by seeing how we did for X, you can move on to what? To our second inequality, which is again saying he must bake at least 10 scones of type P and at least 20 scones of type Q. So again, you are going to say which letter is type Q. So Y is representing what? Type Q. So you say Y. Which word are we looking for? So the word we have is what? At least. So meaning it should be greater than or equal to what? 20. So meaning we have written our first 2 inequalities, simple as that. So remember in mind, you just have to know those 4 words and their meaning, and you'll be able to find any inequality with ease. So which inequality is next? So the next inequality is the number of scones of type Q must not exceed. So whenever we see not exceed, just remember in mind that that is an inequality. So how do we treat an inequality? So remember, going back to our words, we said not more than. What symbol are we using? So not more than is what? Less than or equal to. So meaning our symbol will be less than or equal to. So now let's go back to the question and understand it. So it is saying the number of scones of what? Type Q. So what is our first letter? Type Q. So what is type Q? So type Q is Y. So you say Y. Then you go back to the question. Must not exceed twice the number of scones of type P. So what do they mean when they say must not exceed twice? So whenever you hear the word twice, don't get nervous or don't say the question is hard. When they say twice, they are just saying put a 2 in front of the type you have been given. It can be anything. Twice the number of apples, just put 2 in front. So what type are they talking about? So they are saying twice the number of scores of type P. So they are saying twice the number of type P. Then what letter is type P? So type P is what? X. So you say X. First you say must not exceed. So not exceed means what? Less than or equal to. Then we say that whenever you hit twice the number of scores of that type, which is type P, you just put 2 in front of the letter, which is 2x. Just like that. So that's how simple inequalities are. So I've basically showed you how you can make an equation when you have what? At least, and also when you have should not exceed or must not exceed, and not more than. So now let's look at the final one, which is not more than. So how can you represent when a question comes like this? So it says he intends to bake not more than 60 scones or together. So this question is saying now, here this man wishes now to bake not more than 60 scones or together. And we say that not more than is what? Less than. So meaning the scones altogether, they should be less than or equal to what? 60. Because they are saying not more than 60. So now what letters should you put here? Of course we know that he wishes to bake what? 2 types. So we have P and Q. So these 2 types should not exceed 60. So you say, since X is representing type P, you say X plus, then type Q, we are representing it by Y, plus Y should be less than or should not be more than 60. Meaning you have written all your 4 inequalities and you have gotten all your 4 marks. So this is how inequality questions are simple. So once you write the inequality, drawing and shading, that is the easiest part of linear programming. So most of the students get themselves confused whenever they are making the linear equations. So moving on to our second example, so that you can understand further on how you can make linear equations. So this question also came in 2025. So one of the question came in 10, then the other question came in what? GCE. So this is what I'm telling you. These questions, they always come. So you need to pay particular attention for you to pass the exam and for this question to be simple, because these are free 12 marks. So without wasting much of your time, let's move on to question 2. So question 2 is saying a woman intends to order apples and oranges for sale. Let X represent the number of apples and Y the number of oranges. So Remember, I told you the first thing you need to do before you start solving is write what x and y should represent. So in our case, x is representing what? Apples. So in our case, we'll say x is representing what? Apples. Like that. Then we'll say y is representing what? Oranges. So meaning whenever we see apples, we are going to replace with what? X. And whenever we see oranges, we are going to replace it with y. So now let's go back to our question. So the first inequality we are supposed to make is the total number of apples and oranges should not exceed what? 70. So this, whenever I hear the total number, or whenever I hear the word what? All together, they are simply saying add the two types. So whenever I hear all together or the total number should not exceed, just add. So in our case, what letters do we have? We have x and y. So just say x plus y should not exceed, meaning it should do not be more than what? 70. Meaning you have written your first inequality. Simple as that. So remember, what you need to understand are the words for linear programming to be simple. So the next one is the number of oranges should not be more than twice that of apples. So you can see that these questions, they just what? Repeat, and they just change the what? The language, but everything is what? Is the same. So we said that whenever you hear the word twice, just remember you just have to put what? A 2 in front of what you have been given. So in our case, it is twice that of apples. So meaning we should put a 2 in front of x, because x is representing what? Apples. So you are going to say oranges is represented by y. So you say y should not be more than, so should not be more than twice that of apples. Meaning you have written your second inequality. Simple as that. So now the last one is saying she has to order not more than 40 apples and at least 10 oranges. So here, if you remember, I told you have to look for words. So if you remember, we have what? Not more than and at least. So meaning in this last sentence, we have two inequalities which we are supposed to make, because we have not more than and at least. So whenever you see these words, just know in your mind that there should be an inequality. So she has to order not more than 40 apples. So we said apples are represented by x. So you say our third inequality will be x should not be more than 40. And our final inequality, which is oranges, you are going to say y at least, which means greater than or equal to 10. So this is how simple writing inequalities in linear programming is. So this is where our video ends, or our class ends, for those that are attending it live. So our next class will focus on the graph part. How now can you plot these points on the graph, and how you can calculate the maximum profit, and find the number of things he should hold for him to make the maximum profit. So to summarize, we say that linear programming, this is a system people use in order to minimize the cost of production and maximize their profit. For them to make a lot of profit, they have to use linear programming. Then we also said there are 4 words which are very important whenever you are looking at linear programming. What was the first word? The first word we said was at least. So you need to know what at least mean, which I said it means greater than or equal to. Then we had 3 words which meant the same thing. We had should not exceed, should not be more than, and we also had at most. So these were the 3 words which meant less than or equal to. So once you understand this word, no question on linear programming will be hard for you. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so that you don't miss whenever part 2 comes for plotting the graph.